Somewhere in Canada right now, there are houses sitting in towns so quiet, they almost feel paused. Front doors still standing, prices low enough to stop your scroll, and just enough promise to make you think you found a loophole. 3 of them are in this video, all under $25,000. And at least one of them is not cheap, just delayed expensive. Because this is the part nobody tells you when they sell the dream of low-cost property. The listing price is only the beginning. The real number usually shows up later in repairs, isolation, heating, access, and all the things that photos politely avoid. In this video, one of these houses looks like the smartest buy here, but carries a long-term problem most people will underestimate. One is priced so low it almost doesn't feel real, and there is a reason for that, and one surprisingly might actually make the most sense. I went through every listing, checked what they say, and paid attention to what they don't. All property links are in the description if you want to look at them yourself. These are not polished homes. These are trade-offs with walls, and by the end, I'll rank all 3 based on actual value, not just price. Starting with $15,000 in Lafleche, Saskatchewan, and this is where the idea of cheap starts to get tested. On paper, it looks like the perfect entry point, a house, 2 lots, and a price that feels almost impossible to ignore. But Lafleche isn't just quiet, it's the kind of place where life slows down whether you want it to or not. Small population, limited services, long winters. This isn't convenience living, this is commitment. And that means this property isn't really about the house, it's about whether you can handle the lifestyle that comes with it. The listing shows 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, just 467 square feet, originally built in 1913, small, simple, and sitting on multiple lots, which sounds like upside at first. But then you notice the detail that changes everything. It's being sold completely as is where is, and the seller has never lived in it. That's not just a disclaimer, that's a warning. Because what the listing doesn't clearly say is where the real cost begins. There's no proper heating system in place, no installed electrical panel. Water access exists, but it's not actually connected to the house yet. So what you're really looking at here isn't a livable home, it's a starting point. Electrical alone could run you $5,000 to $10,000, heating another $5,000, water setup several thousand more, and that's before you even touch repairs. Suddenly that $15,000 price starts moving fast. This isn't for someone who wants a cheap home, this is for someone who wants a project and knows exactly what they're getting into. So the real question becomes, are you buying a house or are you buying responsibility? Keep this one in mind because later it shifts how the others look. And if you want the full listing, the link is in the description. Next, $18,800 in Insinger, Saskatchewan, and at first glance this feels like an upgrade. More land, more space, even a detached garage. It looks like you're getting more for just a little more money. But Insinger isn't just rural. It's the kind of place most people never end up in unless they have a reason to be there. Surrounded by farmland, minimal infrastructure, and almost no daily activity. This isn't about lifestyle anymore. This is about purpose. And that shifts how you have to look at this property. The listing shows 720 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, sitting on a 12,000 square foot double lot, which sounds solid until you catch the one line that changes everything. The remains of a dwelling. And that's not just wording, that's the reality. Because what the listing doesn't directly say is that this isn't a livable home. This is closer to a teardown than a renovation. What you're really buying here is land, with a structure that may actually cost you money just to remove. Demolition alone could run anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000. And if your plan is to rebuild, even a basic structure pushes you well past $80,000. Add zoning considerations if you're thinking commercial use, and suddenly this becomes a much bigger decision than the price suggests. So that $18,800 entry point is not the real number. This isn't for someone looking for a cheap place to live. This is for someone who sees potential in land, location, or long-term use, and is willing to build from the ground up. So the real question is, are you buying possibility, or are you buying a problem you'll have to solve? Keep this one in mind, because when we compare everything later, this one shifts the definition of value. And if you want the full listing, the link is in the description. Finally, $24,900 in Belledune, New Brunswick. And this is where things start to feel different. On paper, this looks like the most normal option so far. Bigger footprint, more rooms, and something that at least resembles a livable home the moment you see it. But Belledune sits in that middle ground, not completely isolated, but not exactly in demand either. It's a small industrial town, which means there's some activity, but not enough to guarantee growth or easy resale. So this property isn't about escape or land, it's about affordability with a ceiling. The listing shows 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, roughly 2,000 square feet, and a layout that was previously used as a multi-unit, which immediately makes it more flexible than the others. But then you hit the phrase that should slow you down. Handyman special, as is where is. And by now you already know that's where the real story begins. Because what the listing doesn't clearly spell out is how much work this place actually needs. The heating situation isn't clearly defined. The interior likely needs significant updating. And with older properties like this, hidden issues tend to show up after you start. So yes, it's livable in theory, but only if your standards are flexible and your expectations are realistic. Renovations alone could run anywhere from $15,000 to $40,000. Add heating upgrades and general repairs, and you're quickly in the $50,000 to $80,000 range total. But here's the shift. Unlike the others, you're not starting from zero. You end up with space, structure, and actual usability. This isn't for someone looking for a perfect home. This is for someone who sees potential in size and is willing to fix what's already there. So the real question is, Are you willing to take on renovation risk in exchange for something you can actually live in? Because this one might not be as straightforward as it looks. And if you want the full listing, the link is in the description. Let's pause for a second because this is usually the point where the idea starts to shift. At the beginning, all three of these looked like simple deals: low price, decent upside, maybe even an easy win. But now you can probably feel the pattern forming. Every one of these properties is asking you the same question. Not, can you afford it, but can you live with it? Because the problem here isn't the listing. It's the gap between what it shows you and what it actually demands from you over time. A cheap house sounds straightforward until repairs stack up, isolation starts to matter, and basic things like heating, water, and access stop being guaranteed. And that original price, the number that pulled you in, slowly stops being the number that matters. So before we rank these, there's one thing you need to keep in mind. The one that looks like the worst deal at first glance might actually be the only one that makes sense. All right, 3 properties. Now let's rank them the only way that actually matters here. Not by price, not by fantasy, but by real-world value once the excitement wears off. In last place is Insinger. And this is the one I would avoid. Not because it's the ugliest listing here, but because it asks you to imagine a house that basically isn't there anymore. It looks cheap, it feels like potential, and if you only look at the price, it almost tricks you into thinking you found hidden value, but you didn't. You found land with a problem attached to it. Full rebuild risk, cleanup cost, uncertain return. Emotionally, it feels like an opportunity, but practically, it's a liability. In the middle is Lafleche, and this one is actually more interesting than it first appears. It's not livable right now, no question, but at least there's a structure, a footprint, and something you can work with. The issue is that all the invisible systems still need to be created. Heating, electrical, water. This is less buying a house and more starting a life support system for one. It can work, but only for a very specific kind of buyer. And number 1 is Belledune. Not because it's beautiful, not because it's easy, but because it gives you the one thing the others don't: a usable starting point. You're getting actual space, more flexibility, and a property that feels like it can become something without first having to become a house. Yes, it needs work, but compared to the others, this is the most balanced trade-off. And in this price range, balance is everything. Here's the reality. Cheap property isn't fake. These deals do exist. But what most people call an opportunity is often just a trade-off they haven't priced properly yet. And that's the part that matters. Not whether a house is cheap, but whether the version of life attached to it is something you can actually handle. If you need convenience, comfort, reliable services, easy repairs, these probably won't work. If you expect move-in ready, they definitely won't work. But if you're seriously considering properties like this, do one thing right. Don't visit in summer when everything feels forgiving. Go in winter. Talk to the people who stayed. Learn the reality before you buy the idea. Because some of these are real opportunities, but only for the right person. So now I'm curious, which one would you actually buy? Not the one that looks best on paper, not the one with the lowest price. Which one would you realistically choose if it were your money, your winter, and your problem? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to check any of these listings yourself, all the links are in the description.